Kamala Harris is warning voters about a new phrase Donald Trump has been using to describe some of his fellow Americans.
It's the enemy from within, all the scum that we have to deal with that hate our country. That's a bigger enemy than China and Russia.
The enemy within. Trump used the phrase again in an interview with Fox News yesterday when he was asked whether he expects chaos on Election Day from outside agitators.
I think the bigger problem is the enemy from within, not even the people that have come in and destroying our country. By the way, totally destroying our country. The towns, the villages, they're being inundated. But I don't think they're the problem in terms of Election Day. I think the bigger problem are the people from within. We have some very bad people. We have some sick people, radical left lunatics. It should be very easily handled by, if necessary, by National Guard, or if really necessary, by the military.
All right, our panel is back. Matt Gorman, he's saying that these people should be handled by the National Guard or the military. I think we've learned a lot about whether or not we should believe Trump when he says things, which is to say he is to be believed. We're at the point where he's saying, I'm going to use the National Guard and the military to take my political enemies out of the country?
I didn't take it like that, because I watched the clip, and they also referenced Biden's comments about Biden worrying it not be a peaceful transfer of power. And earlier in the clip, Trump referenced that too. The way I took it was that, obviously, as we know, there were riots in the wake of 2020. There was also riots on Inauguration Day, obviously much smaller scale in D.C. in 2017. I took it as National Guard and military putting those down and controlling those, which I'm totally fine with. I wish that would have been happened on January 6th. That's how I took it, because the clip was a little broader in terms of post-election day and referencing Biden's comments on that.
Is that how you took it?
No. And I think that it's funny to watch the Trump surrogates twist themselves into pretzels. I'm not talking about you specifically, but we're going to watch them all twist themselves and say a version of what you're saying. I think people know what his character is, and this is to be expected. I don't think he's saying anything that he doesn't believe to be true and that he wouldn't actually do if he could do it.
I think here the facts are that Donald Trump and one of his closest advisors, Stephen Miller, have made clear over the course of months, if not this entire year, they have said that whenever Donald Trump sees fit, he will invoke the Insurrection Act and use National Guard and use military to go into American cities, not just to potentially round up migrants, but to crack down on American citizens. And there is no, the Insurrection Act, I've talked to legal experts and military experts about this, the president can use it at his own discretion, his or her own discretion. They can decide when a situation they think warrants it. And so there's no real safeguard or accountability for the president to be able to use that power, which is why there's a big concern. I think when we also talk about what Donald Trump is saying in terms of how he would use this presidential power, we should also think about what Mark Milley recently was found to be saying in Bob Woodward's book, which is that he considers the former president a fascist who has authoritarian leanings, who is someone that will totally disregard the rule of law when it comes to using the military or the National Guard against American citizens or migrants.
Well, I will say, Alex, when you look at what the Harris campaign is doing lately, if you watch, and again, it's always important to pay attention to what a campaign is actually spending money behind, they're doing negative ads on this.
Absolutely, and that's a big shift from what they were doing in August, which was really biographical, pro-Kamala Harris ads. They are now actually back to where the Joe Biden campaign was back in June, which is very much focusing on Donald Trump's conduct, on just making this election a referendum on Trump. One extra thing I will add is I can tell you, people in the Harris campaign inside the Biden White House do actually have legitimate private fears of a Trump Justice Department going after them. If Trump were to win, there is a feeling that even if no charges come, that a lot of people are like looking at their bank accounts, being like, can I afford a big lawyer?
There are some Republicans who also are afraid of that, by the way, like Republicans who have now endorsed Harris that are worried that if Trump were to win, he would potentially go after them.
Yeah, J.D. Vance was out on the Sunday shows kind of trying to explain all of this. I mean, as he has found himself in this position, but here's what he tried to say about whether or not Donald Trump would prosecute his political opponents if he's reelected. Watch.
Would Donald Trump go after his political opponents? He suggested that in the past. Martha, he was president for 4 years, and he didn't go after his political opponents. You know who did go after her political opponents? Kamala Harris, who has tried to arrest everything from pro-life activists to her political opponents.
He said those people who cheated will be
Department of Justice
prosecuted.
as a weapon against people. Well, he said that people who violated our election laws will be prosecuted. I think that's the administration of law. He didn't say people are going to go to jail because they disagree with me. That has, in fact, been the administration and the policy of Kamala Harris, Martha.
So, of course, he said there, Alex, that Trump was president for 4 years. He didn't go after his political opponents. The reporting that we know now from these books is that, well, it wasn't for lack of trying. It was because there were people in his government who said, you can't do that.
That's absolutely right. And it's completely ahistorical what he is saying. There's been tremendous amounts of reporting, not just in books. The New York Times had a piece also very recently that really went through. Also, you can just look at his Twitter feed from back then when he was calling on Jeff Sessions to prosecute X person, Y person, etc. So, it just is not, I understand he's trying to do a political answer, but it's just not historically right.
All right, with us now, CNN political commentator and Democratic strategist Paul Begala and former Trump White House Associate Counsel May Mailman. Paul, I guess we're not at closing arguments yet, but we're getting closer. So weak and unstable. What does the Harris campaign get out of this? This is the first time we've heard this language in this way from the stump.
Oh, I think it's brilliant. It's exactly what they need to be doing. Because the other big story, what does Mr. Trump say over the weekend? He talked about the enemy within, which, as you noted earlier, is fraught with really evil history. Talked about using the military against American citizens. Now, in a former life, Democrats would have said, in my case, scalp on fire, right? He's a dictator. He's a strong man. That only strengthens Trump, especially with those men where he has opened up this colossal gender gap. Look at what Vice President Harris is doing instead. Instead of saying, oh, he's so strong, he's a bully, she's saying, he's weak and unstable. He doesn't even want to debate me, a girl. He doesn't want to go on 60 Minutes. He can't. He can't release his medical records. He can't release his tax returns. It's because he's weak and unstable. So by saying that Trump uses division for diversion, I just think I personally believe it's true, but also I know it's going to have a really good effect on diffusing that strongman appeal that really does work with a lot of guys.
Let me play that appeal you're talking about there, the enemy within rhetoric. And like I said, this is language that has been used almost verbatim by autocrats over, decades and decades. May, listen to this.
I think the bigger problem is the enemy from within. We have some very bad people. We have some sick people, radical left lunatics. It should be very easily handled by, if necessary, by National Guard, or if really necessary, by the military.
May, is that a good closing argument?
Well, one of the big criticisms, and there are many, of the way that January 6th was handled is that there wasn't a sufficient law enforcement presence, including why didn't you call the National Guard earlier? And I think that that's what he's saying here is that, yes, our election day should be secured. And so he's going to do the things, or that the government should do the things that are necessary. But here's the problem is that continuing to pick clips, oh, he said bloodbath, oh, he said enemy within, the population, people don't, Trump says so many things, this just doesn't swing people anymore. Okay, Trump said another thing, we don't like that thing, but if you actually listen to it, oh, it's talking about election day. And so Kamala Harris cannot continue to run on Trump saying a thing. She has to now run on why vote for Kamala Harris. And that is where she has really fallen flat. What is the thing? Why should you vote for Kamala Harris? We already have the people who are voting against Trump, but why you? And that, I think, that has to be our closing argument, and it doesn't seem to be at this point.
Paul?
Oh, I think she will get to that. But again, I think it's really useful to contextualize what Trump's saying. By the way, look at those two clips and turn the sound off next time you watch them. Kamala is energetic. She's youthful. She's forceful. She is strong. And poor Mr. Trump, and I mean this, he doesn't look well. He's melting down. I mean, it's a crummy makeup job, but I mean, I could be guilty of that too. But he looks awful. It looks like a guy who's kind of falling apart, and you kind of want to bring him a glass of water or something. I don't know. But seriously, watch it. Viewers should do this. Watch those two clips back to back that you just showed with the sound off, and you tell me who is more energetic and vital and strong enough to lead America.
How vulnerable is Trump, May, do you think, on arguments about being weak and unstable?
Well, he's a very stable genius. No, I'm just kidding. So I don't know if Trump comes off as elderly, even though he obviously numbers wise is. And I do think energy wise and he's not where he used to be. But he's so high energy that actually, for me and many Republicans, Kamala's suggestion of why don't you go hide in the basement is actually one that many Republicans would welcome. So I don't think attacking him as too low energy. People want that. Actually, they want Trump to be a little bit more low energy. So fine, go away. That's okay.